Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Wherever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is Dave Gugelli. I am joined by Harman Dial, who I sat next to at the Vancouver Canucks game last night as the Canucks fell in overtime to the Detroit Red Wings. Harman, is that maybe the second time in our careers that we've ever sat together at a game?
It's got to be more than a couple, but it's definitely the first time this season. It was funny. Whenever I go to the game, I never expect to see you there, just because it seems like we're always opposite in terms of when we go to the rink for games. But it was a nice surprise, and it was a fun game too. I mean, so many lineup changes, so many newcomers to keep an eye on. A ton of fun storylines, and it was a really fun game, even though the Canucks lost no OT.
You said it. We've got a lot to talk about today. And Jonny Lazarus of Morning Cup of Hockey, noted Rangers enthusiast, Jonny Lazarus, is going to join us in about 5 minutes' time. We're going to talk to him about the JT Miller trade, talk to him about the new additions, because Harman, Filip Chytil, the title of today's episode, Chytil-mania runs wild post-Miller trade. JT Miller's up to 4 points through his first 2 games with the Rangers, so of course there's that. But man, if there was any sort of consolation prize in a trade where you knew you weren't going to get the best player in the deal, Filip Chytil looked phenomenal last night.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not surprised at all. He's a player that, sure, when you look up his point totals on HockeyDB, you see that, okay, he's never really had a 50-point season, and you might walk away thinking, oh, this is just your run-of-the-mill third-line player. But just watching him over the years in New York, he's always flashed more potential than the raw point totals would lead you to believe. And I mean, last night, I think somebody was doing the microstat tracking, logged him as having 9 controlled entries with possession. It's not just the speed and skill and how he transports the puck up the ice, but the poise under pressure that really stands out with him, where he'll have let's say a defender gapping up on him at the blue line, and instead of getting rid of the puck, he's looking to problem solve and maneuver around defenders in a crafty way. He doesn't panic under that type of pressure. We saw him make a lot of dynamic plays. He's a legit play driver. He's not just going to be part of a middle six line. He's the type of player that has the pace, has the skill to legitimately make things happen. And the other thing I'll point out is, beyond just the game, it was really interesting to see that over the last 3 seasons, since the 2022-23 campaign, Elias Pettersson is the only Canuck who scored 5-on-5 points at a higher rate than Filip Chytil. Chytil's been a more efficient 5-on-5 producer than Brock Boeser, than Connor Garland, than Jake DeBrusk in that time frame. The reason he hasn't really broken out as a 50 to 60 point producer, despite that even strength success, is like 3 reasons for me. A, he doesn't really produce on the power play. The most power play points he scored in one season are like 5. And usually it's been below that. Number 2, he has gotten hurt constantly, which has lowered his games played and has disrupted his rhythm and consistency. And third, he's had a lack of top 6 opportunity. For example, this season he averaged just under 14 and a half minutes with the Rangers, whereas first game in Vancouver logged 20 minutes. So I really think he has legit breakout potential if he can stay healthy. That's always the big question mark with Chytil.
Let's get some more context. Let's bring in Jonny Lazarus, who is the host of Morning Cup of Hockey. Jonny Lazarus today is brought to you by Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is packed with all the things you want in an SUV, like the room to fit all your family, friends, hockey bags, and whatever else you've got. And of course, the BZ4X is backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $12,500 in rebates and incentives. And now you can finance a 2024 BZ4X from 0.19% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Jonny Lazarus joins us now. Jonny, I'm sure you're surprised by the title of today's episode. Chytil-mania runs wild post-Miller trade. Filip Chytil had a great first game. Tell us about this player. What are the Canucks getting in him?
Well, it's actually not unexpected. The title might be a surprise, but anyone who's watched Filip Chytil play for the past few years as closely as I have would tell you that, you know, without a doubt, he's going to be a great fit there. And I saw he played second line minutes last night. I saw his goal. I only caught like the last 5 minutes of the game, though, because I had just gotten home from MSG. But Filip Chytil for the first 15, 20 games of this season was probably the best player the Rangers had at forward. And again, I heard you guys talking before, like, yeah, it was limited power play time, limited top 6 minutes, but the way he's able to break the puck from D zone into offensive zone, I don't know if you guys were able to catch that at all last night. Again, I didn't really see the game. Like, he's a one-man breakout. And that's hard to find in the NHL, especially, for centers. Usually defensemen can do it and beat guys up the ice, but seeing a center actually use his legs and use his ability to, I don't want to say like he's elusive, but he's almost like a little bit like slippery in a sense, if that makes sense. But again, like, there are rare moments where you see Filip Chytil cross the red line and dump the puck in. He is often crossing the blue line, trying to make a play, getting a shot, doing a cutback, hitting the second wave of offense. Like, this guy does everything the right way. And he's got a lot of confidence too. The one thing that Chytil, a knock on him, is that his finishing ability isn't really there. I swear the guy gets like 5 grade A chances a night, and they'll go in maybe 1 in every 5. But Chytil is very consistent. You know what you're going to get from him every night. The only thing that's tough is every time he gets hit, you're sitting there kind of like, oh, like, like the injury history we're aware of. I'm not sure if Canucks fans are aware of it. So there were so many times where he went down this year, and it's like, oh no, like, that, like, is that his last shift? Like, is that his last shift?
Yeah.
So that's why I think Ranger fans have accepted moving on from him, just because, his health will always be a question. But as far as the player goes, if you just keep that in a vacuum, he's one hell of a hockey player.
Okay, now what are these injuries we're talking about? Like, I know there's concussion issues. Is it like straight hits to the head? He's been hitting to the boards. Like, how many has there been? That's something we were talking about in the press box last night. We actually don't know how many concussions he's had. Do you know the answer to that?
I believe he's had 5. I believe.
Okay.
It might be 4. It might be 4, but I believe 5. And there was an instance last year where he had tried to come back. I mean, he played 10 games last year, and I'll preface this too. Last year, he was on the second line, or top line, as it turned out to be, with Artemi Panarin and Alexis Lafreniere. That's who he started the season with, and he had, I believe, 6 points in 10 games, no goals, but 6 assists. And that line had taken off right from the beginning. Chytil goes down, Trocheck fills in. That line becomes the best 5-on-5 offensive line in the league last year. But Chytil started there, and that was like his first time getting top 6 center minutes. So it was a big year for him, a big opportunity for him. He gets hurt. That whole thing changes. But back to the point, I think it was January. There was a morning skate, an optional morning skate. So Filip Chytil was on the ice with just, I think, Zach Jones and Jake Leschyshyn, just the 3 of them. So media members, usually an optional skate, you're not paying too close of attention. So we weren't, none of us were really looking, because we were all talking to the road team, which fans got mad at us for. Like, how are you not paying attention? It's just how it is. But Chytil went down doing like a one-on-one board battle, and he was down for like 30 minutes. And, that's when 30 minutes is probably a stretch. He was down for like, it felt like 30 minutes. He was probably down for like 5, but got helped off the ice. And then we didn't see him again until the playoffs. That was like a, 4 or 5 month thing there. And even earlier this year, there was one game he left in the second period, and there wasn't even like a hit that looked questionable. He just left the game, didn't come back, upper body related injury. So it was never disclosed whether it was a concussion or not, but we didn't see anything happen that looked like it could have been. So it really is concussions. You obviously know how NHL organizations operate when it comes to injuries. So there could have been something else, but mostly all the issues with Phil has been his head.
Chytil made a great first impression in Vancouver. Not the only player making a great first impression. JT, 4 points in 2 games. What have you seen from Miller so far in New York?
Oh, I love him. I love the guy. I was a fan, obviously, growing up of his when he first was here. But, seeing him come back and have this sense of like gratitude for being back. Obviously, when he left New York, he was, 24, 25-year-old. The position Chytil is in kind of right now, right, where he's been a solid NHLer, but hasn't necessarily established himself as a star or as an elite forward. So I think coming back here, he has this different sense of appreciation. He's obviously united now with his best friend, Vinny Trocheck, and we've heard all about Vinny Trocheck's relationship with him. But last night I got to talk to JT and hear his side, and how special it is for their families to do this together and be in this together. And obviously have more familiar faces in Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, who he was teammates with before. But just the little things JT does. And Obviously I was hyper focused on him last night watching in person. I wasn't in Boston Saturday, but everyone saw the Will Cooley hit last night, right? Like you
Oh,
all
yeah.
saw that. So Cooley drops the gloves, goes to the box. JT actually was the first guy to get off the bench and go all the way across the ice to give Cooley a little tap on the shins, like effing rights, dude. Like that's good stuff. And little things like that, almost like earn JT's respect right away, right? And I think that stuff can be contagious too. The first goal of the game, Fox makes a beautiful pass to Lafreniere across the seam, but JT drives the net, takes the D with him, opens up that passing lane. Second goal, JT comes up the wall, goes downhill, shoots one in between Aiden Hill's arm. Zibanejad gets the rebound, and the fourth goal, beautiful cross ice pass in the power play. We haven't really had a lefty on the first unit play their strong side. It's really been it's been four righties and Kreider who plays the net front. So that's a little bit of a different dynamic, but the power play's gone 3 for 5 with JT without a practice. That's a good sign. I'm super pumped that he's here, and I think it's going to be a perfect fit.
I was listening to you and Carter Hutton this morning. Great show, by the way.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, guys.
I was listening to you. I know you're super excited about this,
Yeah.
and I will tell you, JT is very effective in that spot on the left half wall there.
Oh, yeah.
On his strong side, big time. One thing I'll tell you, I noticed this in the first game against Boston. JT loves the play where he rings the puck around the board when he's entering on the left. And there was at least 4 instances where I saw his teammates just weren't expecting it, and the puck just got turned over. And I'm like, they'll get that eventually.
Yeah.
They'll get there eventually. But yeah, obviously a really good first impression for JT in New York. What can you tell us about Victor Mancini? He seems like a bit of an unknown in this trade for Canucks fans. They don't have much depth on the right side blue line, so Canucks fans are immediately excited about it. But like, what is Victor Mancini?
Yeah, and he is an unknown guy. Like he wasn't a highly touted prospect out of college. I believe played at Nebraska Omaha for a few years, and then came this year, made the team out of camp, which was definitely the biggest surprise of camp. But he's a big body, right-handed shot. Obviously, can move. Has some decent offensive upside. Like not afraid to shoot the puck. Keeps it kind of simple. But I wouldn't say there's any flashiness there or any sort of flair. He just kind of tries to make the right play, and he's not afraid to shy down from any hit or any physicality. Again, I think he's like a project, right? Like there's nothing that's set in stone with Victor Mancini. I think there's a lot of learning still for him. And, who better to learn from than a guy like Quinn Hughes, right? So I think Quinn will take him under his wing, knowing that he's also a college guy, right? Quinn comes from the University of Michigan, so he understands the grind of a college hockey season and what it's like to transition to the NHL. And I have no doubt that Victor Mancini will be a solid blue line depth piece for the Canucks.
One question that came to my mind in the aftermath of the Miller trade was, I really believe that Miller is going to be an excellent fit for the Rangers, but the question that or the concern I kind of had from a Rangers perspective was whether they're actually positioned as a team to contend for a Stanley Cup while JT is still at his peak, considering he's just about to turn 32. You've got like a pretty narrow window there, and especially with an aging core. In the aftermath of the Miller trade, it wasn't so much, is Miller a good fit for the Rangers? It was a question in my mind of, can the Rangers like salvage this season and next and actually contend for a Stanley Cup? What's your outlook on now that Miller's in the fold? Do you think that's enough to bring the Rangers back in that conversation of being cup contenders moving forward?
Yeah, and it's funny. I was actually just talking about this with Jamie Dodd and Thomas Trance. I just went on their radio show, on Sportsnet 650, and I think the Rangers right now, what they're trying to accomplish. Chris Drury has tried to change his identity on the fly, build a competitive team, not only for this year but for next year. With Artemi Panarin's contract, the final year is next year. Igor Shesterkin's contract kicks in next year, and Adam Fox has about 4 years left on his $9.5 million deal too. They're not trying to waste any time. They are paying these guys a lot of money. They want to put together a winning team. Bring in JT Miller only makes that, more of a competitive team. And what I was telling those two guys before is that the Rangers aren't like other organizations that are going to try to build through the draft. Like, I think Vegas has come in and changed everything. They have a GM in Kelly McCrimmon who's aggressive and isn't afraid to be aggressive and, understands that people want to play there. Like, hockey players want to play for the New York Rangers. So they're never going to have a problem trying to trade for good players or sign free agents. So you don't really have to rely on your draft stock or assets per se. And that's something that's funny too, because Ranger fans were so pissed about giving up the first round pick, but Ranger fans are the first one to tell you that they suck at developing young players. So what are you mad about? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a catch-22 in that sense. But I think if I'm an Eastern Conference team right now and the Rangers sneak into a wild card spot, I would not want to play against them. With Igor Shesterkin and a top power play that can click like they have been already in the first 2 games, that's a scary first round matchup for anybody. And, we've all seen a team get hot at the right time. The Florida Panthers a couple of years ago, last place, they get in because Pittsburgh beats Chicago, and then they go on a run because Sergei Bobrovsky comes in for Alex Lyon and Matthew Tkachuk goes on a tear, and, they just get hot. Like, that's just kind of how it works. So, yeah, I think the Rangers, I don't know if they're like the most elite, but they're good enough to compete, that's for sure. And if they get some better luck, maybe 1 or 2 more pieces, like a third line center or an addition on the blue line, who knows? Because I think right now Mika Zibanejad is going to stay on the top line wing, so we'll see.
That's what I was going to ask you is, A, what's gone wrong for them this season? Obviously, whatever it is, I'm sure JT helps fill that hole. But B, like, do you think they make a move this year?
Yeah, they're not done yet. I don't think they're done. I still think they might want to figure out 1 or 2 more pieces of the blue line. Like, I think Ryan Lindgren might be going. Because I don't think they plan on re-signing him, so I don't know if they would want to lose him for nothing. That's just, an inkling that I have. Like, that's a personal opinion, not like any hunch or anything that I've gotten. And, I did see Larry Brooks report today that they probably do want to get a third line center. Probably a guy like Ryan Donato, maybe, who's an upcoming UFA in Chicago, who's making $2 million a year. So you wouldn't have to give up much because Ryan Donato probably doesn't plan on re-signing in Chicago. Trent Frederick would be a different one, but I don't know if Boston would kind of just give him up for a pick. Like, I think the Rangers can get Ryan Donato for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick. So like that'd be a name that I'd look out for. But yeah, I think the blue line finding 1 more defenseman is a key piece for them to be, a legit contender.
Do you think with Miller and Trocheck now set as your top 2 centers down the middle, that the Rangers are going to try shipping Zibanejad out in the summer to free up some cap space, considering his 5-on-5 decline? Or do you look at him shifting to the wing and being in a role where he doesn't have to be as much of a play driver as, okay, this is actually a spot where he can thrive and where his play can really rebound?
Yeah, well, they're certainly going to try him out at the wing. I think they're going to get time, but I definitely think they're going to see what they can do in the summer. I don't think it's going to happen right now, where they can try to get him to move it or waive his no move clause, because it's going to be hard to get rid of that contract with a no move. Obviously, we saw how everything went down this summer with Jacob Trouba. I don't know if they want to repeat that with a player. So while I do think they would try to have that conversation, I don't think anything is like guaranteed or I don't know if Mika's willing to do that. So, that's the hard part of the business, is those conversations. And if anything were to happen, I do think it'll be this summer. But it's all speculation.
Jonny, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate your time. And people can find you on Daily Faceoff, 9 a.m. Pacific is when Morning Cup hockey starts out here. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you both. Enjoy Phil.
Awesome. There he
and
is.
Victor.
Jonny Lazarus. Yeah, and Victor. And Victor.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah.
Jonny Lazarus. As I said, the host of Morning Cup of Hockey, and we thank him for taking the time to join us today. Harman, we're going to continue this conversation about the game against Detroit, but I wanted to get to something that we kind of alluded to. Let's get all our Chytil talk out of our system before we move down the list. So with that, let's go to our poll question, which of course is brought to you by HSBC Rugby Sevens, where high caliber rugby and the ultimate party weekend collide. SVNS is Western Canada's largest sporting event, and this year is the 10th anniversary of the event. Featuring 12 women's and 15 men's sevens teams, including 2 Canadian squads. They take to the pitch for 3 full days of jam-packed rugby and partying. From February 21st, 23rd, BC Place is the place to be. Grab your friends in your best costume and come on down for the best party in town. Tickets are on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $45 per day. Okay. Our poll question. Let's get to it. Our poll question today is all about Filip Chytil. And the idea of these new additions in Filip Chytil and Drew O'Connor, who we're going to talk about soon, possessing the puck and leading the Canucks in zone entries last night, carrying the puck into the zone, not dumping it in. So this was our poll question. It was a bit of a deeper poll question than usual. We said, what's going to happen A, the Canucks play more like Chytil and O'Connor by possessing the puck on zone entries, or B, Chytil and O'Connor start dumping pucks in and playing low event hockey. I thought this was a great poll question. I like to do deeper poll question every once in a while, and here it was. 44% of people said A, the Canucks are going to start playing more like Chytil and O'Connor, and 56% said B. Before you give your answer, Harmon, I want to play this clip from Rick Tocchet last night because he was asked about this, and at the end of the day, Rick Tocchet wants people to be more like Filip Chytil.
From Chytil and O'Connor, two of your new players, a lot of control in transition, a lot of controlled zone entries. Is that something you'd like to see rub off on the players that were already here before those trades? You'd like to see more of that possession on zone entries?
Yeah, they got speed, right? To be a good rush team, you have to have speed. We just added two guys that have a lot of speed. And they understand, too, getting off the wall, getting the puck in the middle. So hopefully that's contagious. You're right.
Now, I don't think that's a shot at Elias Pettersson, but Elias Pettersson doesn't have speed this year. Skating's never been his strong suit, but does it not feel like every time they go in on the rush, Elias Pettersson just spreads his legs and slows right down? Like, honestly, you need that speed in your game. And again, I'm not saying Tocchet was taking shots at Elias Pettersson, but I did look at that and say, he's talking about how those guys have speed. I don't know. Am I onto something here, Harm?
Well, I've told you many times this year, I feel like skating-wise, with his acceleration, he's lacked that pop, that separating gear to beat guys up the ice, which he previously had, even though he wasn't a burner. Everybody knew he wasn't a Jack Hughes, Nathan McKinnon type speedster through the neutral zone, but he still, in years past, drove a lot of possession entries because he was still, he was top 12. He was in the 88th percentile for among all NHL forwards in the 2022-23 season for speed bursts above 20 miles per hour. I will say, and that now I also think there's an option C where Chytil and to a lesser extent O'Connor continue driving zone entries, but they're kind of just still on an island in that the rest of the team maybe doesn't have the skill set to do those things, and it's in between where those guys keep doing their thing, but the rest of the team maybe isn't able to follow suit. I think this is going to be a really interesting litmus test of whether Tocchet's play style preference and system saps the creativity and rush-based sort of attacking of skilled players. And the key here is it's one thing for Tocchet to say, yeah, I want this to rub off on other guys on the team, but the thing to keep in mind is Chytil, if you're going to be this ambitious with the puck, which I love, there are going to be times when he's going to turn the puck over. At the offensive blue line, there were a couple of turnovers in the Detroit game as well. One in the defensive zone, one off an entry in the attacking end. Rick Tocchet's going to have to be comfortable with that, especially during stretches where maybe the pucks aren't going in for Chytil, and that's going to be the big tell, right? Because if all of a sudden the leash becomes tighter on Chytil in those situations after some turnovers, that's how a player starts playing more conservative, starts feeling like, okay, I want to make these plays, but I also don't want to see my minutes get reduced or get benched. And that's when you can start to see them defer more to dump and chase hockey. So I think this is going to be a really fascinating case study. And to be totally honest, I'm not sure which way it's going to lean.
All right. Split vote on the poll question today. I counted about 5 or 6 times last game where Noah Juleson got the red line and just dumped the puck in, and it's just a turnover. I'm so tired of it, Harm. And again, like, this isn't a Rick Tocchet thing. This is a Noah Juleson thing. This is a players just deciding that, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna play safe. And yeah, people will say this is Rick Tocchet. This is the perfect litmus test. You just said it. This is the perfect way to tell if it's Rick Tocchet or if it's just the Canucks players not skating fast enough. We'll see. We'll see. It's gonna be fun. It's a nice little side storyline. We'll keep track of it as the games continue. But let's talk about Drew O'Connor now. Another new addition who I really liked, and man, Harm, that Pia Suter, Kiefer Sherwood, Drew O'Connor trio got the heavy matchup against Detroit, and I thought they did exceptionally well. I thought all game long those guys were disrupting. The first goal, Elias Pettersson's first NHL point, Drew O'Connor and Kiefer Sherwood get in on the forecheck, cause a turnover, puck gets back to Pettersson. Suter obviously gets the tip and gets the goal, but Drew O'Connor planted right in front of Alex Lyon, right in his sight line. That goal doesn't happen without the hard work of Drew O'Connor and Kiefer Sherwood.
Absolutely. I love his speed. I love his size. And he, like, some guys are big, but they don't play with that edge. They don't actually drive the net. They don't play in the dirty areas. But O'Connor has that work rate. He has that urgency to him. He has a little bit of that bite, which combined with the speed just makes him such a demon on the forecheck. I also love that he has enough skill to keep up with guys and make plays, right? There were a few instances where he was driving offensive zone entries with possession. He wasn't panicking at the first sign of pressure when either a forward on Detroit would pressure him or there was a defenseman close by. He would try and find ways to maneuver around it. Now, is he the most creative offensive guy? No, but for a bottom six identity piece, he's exactly what this team needs. And honestly, I expect him to be the type of winger that Tocchet looks to bump up the lineup when, like, let's say there's a stretch where the top six isn't going. You bump O'Connor up and give him a shot just to see if he can give a top six line a spark. I really think Tocchet will use him in a bunch of different spots up and down the lineup just because he brings that consistency with his pace, with his motor. With his relentlessness that I think is really valuable on any line.
I just love him with Kiefer Sherwood. Like, I love that duo so much. But you're right. Like, if Phil Giuseppe can get top 6 minutes as a spark plug, if Kiefer Sherwood's getting top 6 minutes, there's a chance Drew O'Connor finds himself.
Well, also, like Dakota Joshua, I wonder if I didn't think he was particularly good on that line with Chytil and Garland. Is that a spot where you give O'Connor an opportunity, especially because for Joshua, it's not a knock on him, right? We know what he went through dealing with cancer, missing training camp, missing the sort of season, then running into that hip injury. It's understandable that it might take him some time to get back up to speed, but that's the type of spot where I look at where Joshua's role on that line is to be that energetic guy on the forecheck, to be a big body net front presence. Well, I wonder if O'Connor can check those boxes too. And if Joshua isn't able to find traction there, I really would like to see O'Connor get an opportunity.
I wrote about it on Sunday morning. Well, I wrote it late Saturday night, but published it Sunday morning. Where I was trying to predict where each guy would play and give my thoughts of where they should play. And I had O'Connor right where you just said. I had O'Connor with Chytil and Garland. And then my thought process was O'Connor can move down the lineup when Joshua gets back up to speed. Because here's the thing, Harm. You just brought up the cancer. He finally started to look like himself. It took him a long time, but he did start to look like himself. And then it was about 2 or 3 games after that he goes down with another injury. Just a brutal hand for Dakota Joshua. But now that we've seen him get to that level, my personal belief is that he's going to get back there this season. He's gonna find it again, and he's gonna go back to the player he was. I feel pretty confident in that the fact that we saw it before he went down with this injury, which again, brutal hand for Joshua, super unfortunate, but I am pretty confident that Dakota Joshua is gonna bounce back.
Yeah, I'm still a believer in his skill set. I'm not concerned about his contract. I believe he'll get back up there. It's just how quickly. Is it going to be 5 games, 10 games, 20 games? We just don't know yet.
And to be clear, I don't think he's there now. I think he should be lower in the lineup. Again, not a knock on him. It's just how I see it right now. You have Drew O'Connor, and I agree with you. Playing him with Connor Garland and Filip Chytil might be your best bet. Let's talk about a negative, and we're going to talk about Marcus Pettersson as well, another new addition to the team. But let's talk about a negative as we talk about the forward group. I thought the Canucks, I don't even call them the top line. I thought the trio of Jake DeBrusk, Elias Pettersson, and Brock Boeser was dreadful. I thought they were horrible through 40 minutes of play. They picked it up in the third, but I even wrote this in Instant Reaction. I was like, they picked it up in the third, but Detroit's also playing the second leg of a back-to-back and looked lifeless for most of that game. You don't get oh, great, for picking it up in the third when you're playing a team like that with what they were going through, second of a back-to-back. I'm sorry, but it was not good enough from the Canucks top line. And it's not just an Elias Pettersson thing. I don't think Jake DeBrusk or Brock Boeser won a single board battle in the first 40 minutes of the game. Someone's got to get Elias Pettersson the puck, and this is the thing you and I were talking about the press box as well. Yeah, you want wingers that are going to be able to get him the puck, and Boeser and DeBrusk clearly couldn't do that last night, there's no excuse for that. But also, Filip Chytil's carving everyone up. Why can't Pettersson just transition himself and get into the zone all by himself? Why can't he do that anymore? We've seen him do it before. Why can't he do that anymore? Again, I'm not saying this is all on Pettersson. I'm not saying this is all on Boeser and all on DeBrusk. I just thought the trio was very, very bad through 40 minutes, and I'm not really waving the pom-poms for a good final 20 minutes from them.
Yeah, through the first 2 periods, it was painful watching them play. It was gain the red line, dump it in. It was dump and chase without the chasing.
Yeah.
Like, it was just gain the red line, dump it in, and Detroit's going to get the puck now. Like you said, I didn't think Boeser and DeBrusk won nearly enough battles on the forecheck. And one thing I'll say about Jake DeBrusk is when he's not scoring, I've been underwhelmed as far as his impact in other areas of the game. Right? Like, I get it. He's going to have stretches. He's always been a streaky player. You can't knock a guy for being streaky when this is what he's been his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about, even if you're not scoring for 10, 15 games, can you find ways to, like, there haven't been many times this season when I thought, oh, look at Jake DeBrusk in on the forecheck. Look how ferocious he's been. Look at his work retrieving pucks, helping his line control possession. Like, yeah, he's defensively responsible. He doesn't burn you there. But I don't think he contributes enough in other facets of the game. And that's, like, there's a big difference between, let's say there's a stretch where you only have 4 points in 15 games. There's a big difference between scenario A, where you're still winning board battles, you're still helping your line control possession, you're putting Pettersson in a position where he has more puck touches, versus scenario B, same, whatever, 4 points in 15 games, but you're kind of invisible out there. You're not really noticeable. You're not really making enough of an impact. So that applies to him. That applies to Boeser as well. The other thing that I'll say about that trio, when they did get their few scoring looks, I thought they executed really poorly. There were 3 plays in particular that stood out. Late in the second period, I believe it was Brock Boeser who was in on a 3-on-1. He elected to shoot instead of passing, and from an in-tight area, just completely missed that. You just can't miss.
Aren't you thinking of when he passed?
No, that was the third period.
Oh, because that was another one. Yes,
yeah, that was another one.
Yes.
So this first one, he just missed the net from a spot where it's like, you got to at least make the goalie make a save. Now, in the third period, the rush you were alluding to, Elias Pettersson gains the zone with control.
Makes a great pass.
Beautiful east-west pass. Boeser has a clear path to attack the net, get a grade A chance off. And he instead tries to feather a pass into the slot where DeBrusk was driving and trying to find the tap in there, misses the pass. And then in OT as well, Pettersson was in on a 2-on-1, misses the net. Like, 3 grade A scoring opportunities where they didn't even force the goaltender to make a save. It's
moments, Harm. It's moments. Like, what does Tocchet say? Oh, we're trying to pass the puck into the net right now. We gotta start shooting the puck. There's a knock on Boeser right there on that play that you were just talking about. For some reason, in the big moments, we don't get our moments going the right way. This is what Tocchet talks about all the time. And when it's those big moments, like, you rely on your star players. Yeah, you miss the net. That's tough. But, like, if you're a star player, which Elias Pettersson is supposed to be, like, you have to make the goalie make a save on that play in overtime. Because, like, what happens? They go the other way. Right? It's, and again, Tocchet was asked this post game too. It was, does it feel like maybe a different game with Quinn Hughes on the ice? And to their credit, like, the Canucks did control play. Again, not sure how much credit I give them. Second leg of a back-to-back for Detroit. Canucks did control play all night long, and they were the better team. Maybe they deserved a win there. But, like, at the end of the day, you need to come through on those moments. And obviously that's where they miss Quinn Hughes. Like, Quinn Hughes comes through on those moments. He always does. He's done it all year long. He's done it all throughout his career in Vancouver. They need to have some more moment makers aside from just Quinn Hughes right now.
Well, it's just the stakes too, right? You don't have JT Miller in the lineup because he's obviously traded to New York now. Quinn Hughes is unavailable. That's where you need your big guns to come through offensively, especially considering the circumstances of tired Detroit team, second leg of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights. You need that killer instinct from your best players to, like, not just get scoring opportunities, but just to bury the puck in the back of the net to create that moment, especially when you're in the middle of a playoff race where you need every single point. It was really disappointing because in my mind, the second line, third line, fourth line, you even look at the back end, I thought for the most part, the rest of the team did everything they could have. I'm not looking at, the second or third line or other parts of the roster to necessarily make that extra difference, because they can help control play. They can generate some shots and chances, but they don't have the elite finishing ability that the top line trio of Pettersson, Boeser, and DeBrusk should have. So that was really disappointing and wasted, in my mind, it wasted an effort that was otherwise really strong from all the other parts of the lineup, where I thought the work rate was high. I thought they were connected. I thought the blue line was really solid in Hughes' absence. It's disappointing that you couldn't translate all that success in your other parts of the lineup in an overall good game process wise into a result, just because your top guys couldn't come through again.
Okay, let's get to anyone else. We've got a lot of listener questions. I want to talk about Marcus Pettersson. I want to talk about some more stuff as well. Let's get into anyone else, which is brought to you by Greta. A great spot for all games, home and away. The home of our electric watch parties. Greta Bar YVR is a great spot to be, and we hope to see you there for all of our watch parties all season long. There's one coming up hosted by Sakaris and Price, presented by Fountain Tire in support of the YVR Run Club. It is the Canada versus USA Four Nations game on Saturday, February 15th. Doors open at 4 p.m. Puck drop is at 5 p.m. Tickets are just $10. VIP reservation for $40, and you can reserve at nationgear.ca. Get your tickets, nationgear.ca. That Canada versus US game, gonna have some added heat to it at this point. There's gonna be some heat. Although I did just get a notification that apparently the tariffs are on pause. Harmon, just your thoughts on the tariffs. Not good. Yeah. The old Rick talking. I love that Taka was asked about that, because obviously the U.S. national anthem is being booed in every Canadian, Raptors game, Leafs, it's happening, okay? And it happened last night. I do want to shout out the anthem singer, who did an absolutely phenomenal job, and I think she was very nervous. And look, it's hard to do anything when you're getting booed, even if I'm sure, I hope she knows that she wasn't getting booed, but at the end of the day, she was the one singing when she was getting booed. So I really felt for her there. I really, really did. I don't have a take on the booing, but I did see, I got tweeted by a few people that said she was sitting in the in a seat after the game, or during the game, and a bunch of people were coming up to her and telling her she did a phenomenal job on the anthem. So I wanted to shout her out. She did an awesome job. But yeah, those are tough circumstances to perform the anthem in, man.
She doesn't normally do the anthem, right? So, no. I mean, yeah, you're in your head, you're thinking, oh, it's probably related to whatever's going on between Canada and the U.S. But also imagine in that situation, an arena full of fans, how nervous you'd be just hearing boos, especially because it's the first anthem you do. It'd be another thing if you did the Canadian anthem first, and it goes swimmingly well. But yeah, I'm glad that she got her flowers and props.
She had a big smile on her face when she was doing the Canadian anthem, because that was the loudest I've heard anybody ever get for the Canadian anthem. So, shout out to her. I can't remember her last name. It's Agasha something, but I can't remember her last name, so I apologize. But I did want to give her a shout out, even if it's a half shout out. I did want to give her a shout out for that one. And yes, post game, Rick Talkin asked if he's ever heard an anthem get booed. He says, I don't know. Good question. I don't want to get political. I like it. Okay, let's get to anyone else. We've got a few in here that I wanted to get to. This one from 7 in 7, who's asking about winger options in the offseason if the Canucks don't re-sign Brock Boeser. Obviously, they have some extra cap space. No JT Miller on the books. That changes the outlook going into the offseason. But Harmon, something I said to you yesterday, I've been saying it for a while. I would not be extending Brock Boeser right now. Quite frankly, I think they should trade Brock Boeser. I think there's also an element of it where Brock Boeser was at his best when he played with JT Miller. And do you have a month to see if Brock Boeser is going to be able to be great next to anyone other than JT Miller? Because he wasn't great next to Elias Pettersson last night. I like Chytil with Garland. I don't know. I look at it and I say, I probably wouldn't extend Brock Boeser right now.
It just comes down to the contract price. Even with the cap going up, if you have to pay him $8 to $8.5 million on a 6 or 7 year deal, I wouldn't be comfortable taking on that type of risk, even in a rising cap climate. And so we'll see, right? And this is where for management, when you're making that decision on Boeser, it's not just, do we like him at these terms? They're going to have to think 2-3 steps ahead, looking at the trade market in the summer, looking at the free agent market and going, what's the best way for us to deploy that cap space? Can we find a better fit than Boeser? Do we feel confident we can replace him? Because if you don't, that's where you might be more willing to concede and sign that contract. But honestly, the way management has been talking about it, I think they're leaning towards a situation where unless Boeser's willing to take a team-friendly deal, in which case, yeah, I think you extend him. But unless he's willing to sign below market value, it really seems like a scenario where they don't seem comfortable to extend him. I mean, I was there for Patrick Allvin's media availability on Saturday at the South Terminal, right off. Like the Canucks had just landed, and Allvin straight off the plane does the media scrum. It was so interesting where he's asked about Marcus Pettersson and immediately talks about, yeah, it's a priority to get that extension done. Going to talk to his agent soon, all that good stuff. Asked about Brock Boeser, who's played over 500 games as Vancouver Canuck. And gives the same stance that he always has of, we're still evaluating Brock. I mean, what more is there to evaluate Brock? You already know what he is. Whereas obviously in the case of Pettersson, they haven't even seen him. They hadn't even at that point seen him in a Canuck uniform yet. And of course it makes sense that they would want to prioritize getting a Pettersson extension done. But just the contrast between how eager and motivated they sounded to get a Marcus Pettersson extension done versus how lukewarm they continue to sound on Brock, I think that's a really interesting indicator.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it right now, especially at that price. Like you said, if it's a discount, sure, welcome him back. But if it's market value, nope. I can't get on board with it. I can't. I really, really can't. It goes back to the Bo Horvat thing, right? For me, at least, it's what have you done over your full body of work, not what did you do last season and what did you do at the start of this season. It's your full body of work. And the full body of work for Brock Boeser, in my opinion, is not $8 million. It's not, man. Even with the cap going up, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be doing an extension with Brock Boeser right now, unless, like you said, it's below market value. Speaking of tariffs, we were at the game, so we didn't hear it, but I did hear a replay of it. John Shorthouse, did you hear this? Made a tariff joke that was so perfect. I think he said something along the lines of, this power play is actually going to be 2 minutes and 35 seconds because of the 25% tariff on Canadian teams. And in all seriousness, like, people in the chat are bringing up the idea of it making life a little bit harder on Canadian NHL teams. Again, it's still so early, but we are going to talk about it down the road, I'm sure, if it actually becomes a problem or something that we hear about. But, like, someone in the chat's like, what do you think? Do you think it could be a problem? I think absolutely it could be a problem. Will it be? We don't know, and we'll talk about it when it is, but absolutely it could be. Yeah, anyways. Well,
the biggest thing that stands out is the Canadian dollar, right? And
Exactly.
from a league standpoint, the Canadian franchises, especially Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, of course, in that conversation, a lot of the NHL's revenue comes in Canadian dollars. So if the dollar continues to decline, that's going to have a financial impact on the league.
Absolutely. We'll talk about it later, I'm sure. I'm sure it'll come up again. I wanted to say this. Marcus Pettersson really impressed me. I really liked the defensive game. When you and I were talking about him yesterday, we said came as advertised. I heard all about this defensive stick. I thought he made a few really good reads along the wall, specifically in the defensive end, where he caught the opposition off guard because it kind of looked like he was going to be leaning away from them and giving them some space. And then he just kind of like jabbed at them and he got in with his stick and he poked the puck off the stick. Like, he was legitimately catching guys off guard with how good and how quick his defensive stick was last night. So I really, really liked what I saw from Marcus Pettersson last night.
Yeah, just a steady minute muncher, right? Nothing flashy about his game, but just such a reliable safety net. The type of guy that when he's on the ice, you just feel safe and comfortable knowing that he's going to be out there to put out fires defensively. I also like that while he's not a dynamic puck mover, he has enough mobility when pucks are dumped into the Canucks zone where he's agile on his edges, turning around. He can win those races to be first to the puck, but also he's intelligent at scanning the ice and looking at his breakout options before he gets to the puck. So it isn't a case of he gets the puck, there's a forechecker bearing down on him, and he feels the duress, feels the pressure because he doesn't know what he's going to do with the puck. Because he's proactively scanning the ice, and I noticed this a couple times, he's really decisive about as soon as he gets to that puck and he's got a forechecker on his back, he can make that quick first pass to a winger to help key the breakout. So I was really impressed with him, and I'm really intrigued to see how he continues to fit with this blue line moving forward.
Speaking of Marcus Pettersson, Rick Dollywell of Donnie and Dolly, the team on Czech TV, reported today that he talked to Marcus Pettersson's agent and that he said both sides know this is going to be a long-term deal and that he expects something to get done and he expects to see something get done soon. Saturday, you were at the press conference. Patrick Alvin was talking about Marcus Pettersson before you even saw him play a game, said it's a priority to get him signed long-term. Harman, I ask you, putting you on the spot a little bit, so I apologize, but what's a Marcus Pettersson extension look like?
I think it's probably $6 to $6.5 million cap hit is my initial thought. Drance and I wrote an article today over at The Athletic looking at a couple comps. I think the absolute floor where it's like there's no way Pettersson's contract comes in cheaper than this was Esa Lindell, similar sort of mold of just like a big bodied kind of defensive defenseman out in Dallas, and his extension was 5.25 times 5 years. But you also got to keep in mind with Dallas, no state income tax. Plus, in this case, Pettersson's camp has some leverage, right? Where they know that the Canucks really like the player. The Canucks gave up a lot to get him. And then the other comp, just as far as setting like a ceiling, is Brady Shea, who I believe got about something similar to a 7x7. And in Shea's case, I don't think Pettersson will quite get up to that full cap hit just because Shea's put up better offensive numbers. But somewhere in the middle of that is kind of what I would expect for Pettersson, a cap hit that starts with a 6.
Can I give you a prediction? When this contract is signed, there is going to be sticker shock from Canucks fans. Because I think this is going to be one where we're comparing it to past contracts, and I think the Pettersson camp is going to come out and say, well, we know what the cap's going to look like, and it's going to be a lot, so what is Marcus Pettersson actually worth? Hell, in 3 years' time. And look, I'd say a deal that starts with a 6 is going to look great when the cap's at $130 million or whatever. What's it going up to? Was it $130 million?
I think it was going to go up to 116 in 3 years.
That's the highest? Okay, 116. Yeah. Sorry, it was 30 total. Okay, I got it now. When the cap goes up that high, like $6 million for Marcus Pettersson should look like a steal, you would think.
Yeah, I would say the thing with him is he hasn't historically been a big point producer, so that is partly why the cap hit is probably, it's not going to be anything too insane. The biggest leverage he has in these contract talks are he's averaged top pair type minutes, even going back to Pittsburgh. So he logs a ton, and that's the biggest statistical driver for him in these negotiations. And yeah, ultimately 6.5. Provided that he's able to sort of fit well here, I think that would be the type of contract the Canucks should sign, considering they're in a spot where they really need a steady top 4 minute muncher who can provide sound two-way value.
Really liked his game yesterday. Really, really liked his game. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say about last night's game?
Just a big picture sort of thought with the team. I don't think this is something that they're necessarily going to have to address now, but at least ahead of next season, something that comes to mind. If the Canucks want to really reemerge as let's say for next season cup contenders, one thing in my mind that I look at and think about from a playoff style perspective is Pettersson, Chytil, Suter as your top 3 centers, while there's a lot of talent there, it stands out to me that all 3 are either fragile or small, right? In the case of Suter, it's a size. He's 5'11". He's kind of slight. In the case of Chytil, we know that he's fragile because he's had all those injury risks in the past. And then with Pettersson, it's not that his size is necessarily an issue, but he is a slight guy. We wonder if he has that dog in him to be successful in a playoff style environment. We saw him sort of wilt under pressure in the playoffs last year. And that's just something that in my mind sticks out when you think about, especially in the Pacific Division, you end up in the playoffs, your path probably goes through Edmonton. And you got to contend with McDavid and Draisaitl down the middle. Last season, it was it was easier for the Canucks to be competitive in that environment because they had JT, because they also had Elias Lindholm as a great checking center to play a lot of those tough shutdown minutes. But when you look at Pettersson, Chytil, Suter down the middle, it's fine for the regular season, but in a playoff style environment, looks a little fragile, looks a little small. And
I think this next month is probably going to be our indicator of if this team's going to go out and add a center. We've heard that they want to go add an impact forward that can grow with the core. So we'll see. We'll see what happens when it comes to that. But we actually had a few questions about that very question. This one was from Dan Jardine, regular from the show. He said the trades make the team younger, faster, and cheaper. But will the Canucks use all this money at the trade deadline, or will they wait until the offseason to go after some free agents? Harman, I think the answer is going to be given to us over the next month. Like, how does the team perform? Do they rattle off some wins? Because, like, they've already added to this team, and yes, it looks like they're going to sign Marcus Pettersson, so it's not like they just paid for a rental that's going to leave the team. You don't think. But I don't think they're going to be buyers if they're still out of a playoff spot in, let's say, 2-3 weeks. And the other thing to consider is it's really only 2 weeks of games because the Four Nations face-off is going to have a giant break in the middle of that. It's going to be two weeks off. So you don't have all that big of a sample size to go off of. But again, I think a lot of decisions are going to be made over these next, again, month, but really 2 weeks worth of games.
Yeah, it's going to be an evaluation period. The Canucks are positioned if they want to make additions. You look at Puckpedia, they're projected to accrue around $16 million in deadline cap space, so they can make moves if they want. Now, whether they actually should is another question. And in my mind, if they are going to be buyers, it has to be for non-rentals. It can't be for players that are just for the season, unless you're talking about a depth guy that costs you a mid to late round pick. Fine, if you want to add that. But if you're looking at difference makers on the market, it should be players that can help you for the next 2-3 seasons, not just this year. Because let's be honest, I still don't really believe that this is a year where they can realistically contend for the Stanley Cup. And so that has to be something management keeps in mind.
I love it. Okay, let's get one more listener question in. This one from LC250. Ooh, this is a good heater. Let's end this. No, two more, because there's one from James Moore that I want to get to. But let's get to this one from LC250, because it's Chytil-mania running wild. He said, will Filip Chytil be the next JT Miller in the example of his production will explode to 100 points after he's given more ice time and opportunities? Harman, Johnny said it. There was a Rangers fan named Mike in our chat earlier. You are going to love Filip Chytil if he can stay healthy. That is a big if. I think he can produce some points. We've seen the 5-on-5 point production. I saw people pointing out this 5-on-5 points per 60. It's actually very similar to JT Miller's, and it's way better than when the two guys were acquired. I'm talking JT Miller right now. It's very similar to what Miller is at right now. So we'll see if that translates, right? Like, that's the other thing is it's like, okay, well, what happens when you get more minutes? That's always the question. Could I see his production increasing in Vancouver? Absolutely. But he's going to have to stay healthy before we have any of these conversations.
Yeah, to me, a Chytil breakout would be him developing into like a 50-60 point player, which would be a great scenario for the Canucks. But the reason JT broke out as a 90 to 100 point player here in Vancouver is because he became not just a power play one fixture, but over the last number of years, he was one of the top power play point producers in the NHL, period. I don't see that type of elite power play skill set in Chytil's game, and ultimately without elite power play production, you're not going to be that like point per game or higher type of producer. And honestly, I don't think anybody expects him to have that type of ceiling, but if he can break out and be a 50-60 point center, that's a huge win for the Canucks. And again, massive asterisks with all the injuries and him having to stay healthy.
Yeah, and obviously if all those points are coming at 5-on-5, that's even better. So, yeah, 60-point ceiling. I think he might be able to do it. That's a breakout for Filip Chytil. Okay, James Moore. Let's close it on this, Harm. He said, predict Boeser's future. A, re-signs pre-deadline. B, traded at the deadline. C, make him an offer this summer. If he leaves, he leaves. I am going with B. They will trade Brock Boeser before the trade deadline.
Honestly, this is something I was thinking about over the weekend, and I asked Alvin straight up, would you be open to the idea of using him as your own rental, or do you view him as an asset that is too valuable to potentially risk losing for nothing, and you'd need to monetize him ahead of the deadline? Alvin wouldn't commit to an answer one way or the other. So I'm going to be honest, I don't know, right? Because I still really wonder how. Like, would you be surprised if just knowing this ownership group and also the season Quinn Hughes is having and how badly he wants to be in the playoffs, to where, like, as much as we may look at this as kind of like a lost season from the standpoint of contending for the cup, and so whether they finish 8th or 9th in the Western Conference, it's like, yeah, you'd like to be in the playoffs, but it's not a make or break deal for us on the outside. But internally, is that a make or break thing where does this organization look at missing the playoffs as a catastrophe that they just can't deal with because of the playoff revenue, because of trying to appease Quinn Hughes and keeping him happy? And how does that complicate the decision of if you get to the deadline and get to the point where you say we don't have an extension in place with Boeser, do you lean towards maybe sort of keeping him as your own rental? Even though from an asset management perspective, I would disagree with that move. Like that is something I've thought about. The other thing too is, like, don't be like, this management group could get creative too, right? Where, imagine this scenario. Let's say they don't want to keep Brock. They want to make sure they monetize the asset, but they also want to stay competitive for the season. Would you be at all shocked if they dealt him for futures, took those futures, and immediately flipped it for somebody that can help them?
No, I wouldn't.
Somebody with term left, the same way they kind of did with Marcus Pettersson.
Same way they did with Hronek. The same way they did with Marcus Pettersson was extreme. We knew it was going to burn a hole in their pocket, but I didn't think, like, same night that would happen. But no, of course not. Of course that wouldn't surprise me.
So they've got a lot of different options at play, and I'll be honest, I don't have a prediction. That's something that in my mind I've been trying to work out what they're thinking, what they're going to do. Now, one other thing we should mention, DPD was great. I think we glossed over that. He was phenomenal. Got to keep him in the lineup. It also
Carson
raises
Soucy, healthy scratch. We didn't even talk about that.
By the way, I was sort of looking at this. I realized this a week ago. Did you know that he has a full no trade clause?
Soucy?
Yeah.
I did know that, yes.
Yeah, I was like, I knew he had some trade protection, but I was like, man, a full no trade clause.
Wait, it's full? I thought it was
it's
a modified.
It's a full no trade clause until July 1st when it becomes a 12-team no trade list. But I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, he has a full no trade. That's pretty wild. But it does make you wonder about Soucy's long-term fit here. Look, if I were running the Canucks, I would yank Juleson from the lineup and play Soucy on the offside. I just think Juleson is unplayable at even strength at this point.
100%.
But look ahead to next season potentially. Quinn Hughes, Marcus Pettersson, if you re-sign him, and then DPD, if he's able to sort of establish himself, you have 3 lefties that could all conceivably be in your starting lineup on the left side for next season. I wonder if Soucy could become a piece that they look at and go, once his no trade transitions to a 12-team no trade list, maybe that's a contract they look at exploring the market on.
Which is crazy to say, because he was so good last year. Like, he was so good last season. But I agree with you. Really liked what I saw from Elias Pettersson. I would put him in the lineup with Carson Soucy. I want to get a look at Victor Mancini. Like, I would have had Mancini in the lineup over Juleson, but that doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, I am sure. You said it, unplayable at 5-on-5. It's tough. But I would
screening.
Not
he was screening
Lankinen
on the Sherratt point shot goal.
Yeah, like if you're like a big part of his game is battling for body position in front of the net, and like you're getting outmanned like that, it's like what are you doing? Tell me again what you do here. It's tough. It's tough right now.
It's also like you brought in Marcus Pettersson. He's an elite penalty killer. He's a first unit PK guy. Do you really need Juleson in the lineup just for his penalty killing now?
Yep, exactly. The answer is no for those at home. Elias Pettersson, really liked what I saw from him in terms of calling for the puck. Like, he really wanted the puck on his stick. Noticed that a few times where he was just calling for it. And then he was skating the puck up the ice. He was making that big first pass. Remember, folks, 2 weeks ago, I went to see this guy in Abbotsford, wrote it in this notebook right here. And I told you all, his transition game really surprised me. He was skating the puck up the ice. He was passing the puck up the ice. He was hungry for the puck on his stick. And I must say, it is really nice to see him not changing his game at all now that he's in the NHL. He's done a great job in the transition, and I got to chat with him last night, which was really fun. So, shout out to DPD.
It's also funny because I think in the offseason, we were looking at the Canucks and going, they've got a deep, talented forward group. The back end's a little bit questionable. But after all the roster changes and some of the developments lately, we could be looking at a scenario moving forward, looking ahead at next season where your back end's in fine. Like it's especially like, think about it. You could have Quinn Hughes, Filip Chytil, Marcus Pettersson. That's a really talented top three to lean on. You still got Tyler Myers, who's been playing good hockey and I think is fine at $3 million. DPD is developing. Tom Willander is going to sign once BU season is over, and he's having a really good season this year. Could he be an impact difference maker for you next season? All of a sudden, you've got a blue line that is a lot deeper and more mobile and can transition the puck. It's like night and day compared to what they were icing at the start of the season potentially. But then your forward group, you look at it, and that's where J.T. Miller leaves a huge hole. Elias Pettersson, we thought was going to play at a superstar level. He hasn't played at a superstar level. Brock Boeser could be a player that the Canucks choose to walk away from. Then your forward group looks like it lacks difference makers at the top of the lineup. So it's just funny how quickly that dynamic has potentially changed there.
And we'll close it on that note. I want to remind everybody to get your Family Feud survey responses in. We do it every week here. We have a lot of new listeners on the show today on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. Make sure you subscribe to the Canucks Army YouTube channel, like the episode as well, and don't miss an episode Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Let's close it out with our Bet365 Bet of the Day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365. Harman, there's one NHL game tonight, and the Ottawa Senators are underdogs on the road in Nashville, but I am taking them to win, and we've been on an absolute heater. My plus 190 Columbus Blue Jackets bet hit, and I can just hang my hat on that. I think it might have been another overtime
It
one.
was. You've won 4 in a row, and I'm pretty sure all 4 were overtime wins.
I don't miss. You got
a better OT record than the Canucks.
Touche. Ottawa Senators plus 115 on the money line. You can get that at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. It must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. We'll wrap it up there. For my co-host Harman Dowler and technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is David Quadrelli. Thank you so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.